Hello and welcome to our first Hoopscast of the year. Kevin Brockway and Pat Dooley, the Gainesville Sun. And Kevin, Florida's kind of off to a similar start as they were last year. I think the difference is they're not fooling any of us. We know they're not that good, but they are 15-2.
Yeah, you're wondering if you've seen that same movie before, right. That kind of movie where you get off to the fast start, 13-2, the exact same non-conference schedule as last year, and certainly 2 wins, a good start to start the SEC, but against 2 teams that are probably going to be more the bottom feeders in the SEC West, and certainly Ole Miss having all those injuries to the guards certainly impacted them as well. But to get a road win against Auburn on Wednesday night wasn't a thing of beauty, but Irving Walker obviously hit some big shots down the stretch, as did Walter Hodge at the end of the game.
Yeah, I had to take a shower after watching that game. I felt so bad. It was really an awful second half, but as you said, Florida gets the win. That's what matters most. And now they go on and kind of get into a little bit more of a meaty part of the schedule. Ironically enough, the toughest team they've played so far, probably the whole season, is Arkansas, and Arkansas is 0-2 in the SEC.
Yeah, and what does that really tell you about the league? They go out, they beat Texas and Oklahoma, and then they start out 0-2. They lose to Ole Miss, and they lose to, obviously in the beginning of the season to Mississippi State at home, a game where they shot the ball
Got hammered there. Hammered. I watched that game, yeah.
Shot the ball really horrendously, and I think that's part of a young team. They have an excellent young point guard in Courtney Fortson, who is probably an SEC Freshman of the Year candidate, and a physical presence inside in Michael Washington that they're going to have a hard time with. But I think also they're a young team. They start 3 freshmen, and with young teams, you're going to have those ebbs and flows and ups and downs, similar probably to what Florida had last season, and may have again this season.
So I was telling somebody, Florida, it would be great if Florida could steal a win against Arkansas, and they said, well, what do you mean? Florida's at home, and they're probably the favorite team. I go, yeah, but you look at the matchup, Florida can't rebound, Arkansas can. There's only one guy in the SEC with double-figure rebound average, and that's Washington from Arkansas. I think I would make Florida a prohibitive underdog in this game.
Well, certainly, Arkansas's physical presence is going to be difficult for Florida to deal with. However, I think that we saw some signs maybe a little bit with Kenny Cagey coming on and playing a little better in the Arkansas game. Alex Tyus had a double-double. I thought they actually rebounded the ball much better against Auburn.
But that was against 6'4" guys. Auburn's got no size, no height. I want to see them do it against a team that's big, strong, and long. And Auburn, I don't know if Auburn ever going to have anybody over 6'7"? Is it a rule that you can't be over 6'7" in Auburn?
Lebo's had a hard time recruiting size there. The one guy that he had was a 7-footer, Boubacar Silla. Lasted all but 10 minutes at the school. He was no good. But I think the question is, Dan Werner is a guy I think that has to step up his game, be a little more physical, because he's certainly not shooting the ball very well. And Kenny Cagey is a guy, like I said, coming off the bench. I mean, even Eloy Vargas showed me a fraction, a little bit at the end of the first half in that game. And Alex Tyus, 14 and 12. It was a good effort for him, but at 6'8", 220, I mean, you just wonder if he's going to be capable of doing that when he faces a Patrick Patterson or a Michael Washington.
Well, the other thing they can't count on is a lot of rebounds from their guards, although Kalatis gets some there. I can get them from the other two because they are so small. I wish when my SAT scores were being announced, they would have had the guys who list the sizes in the paper, because I would have ballooned them up about 20 points right there. I mean, I look at some of these guys and they go 6'9", 6'8", and I'm like, no, 6'4", 6'5", but that's neither here nor there. Florida obviously needs to get this win. If they can get that win at home, then they go to Columbia, right? That's the next game. Certainly a game that's winnable. And that's going to be interesting. I've said all along, this is a team that needs to get in the NCAA tournament. It'd be great for them. It doesn't matter what they do in the tournament, it just needs to get to the tournament after not getting there last year. And it's going to be a struggle because RPIs in this conference, you go out and beat a team in the SEC, your RPI doesn't jump. And there's nobody out there left, now that Tennessee's struggling, that is going to really pump up or puff up your RPI right now.
Yeah, Florida started out at 44, and I don't see them moving much past 40 or in the 30s. So
they have to win almost every game to get up to the 30s. They'd have to be like 16-2 or something.
Yeah, and I think 11, 12 wins. This might be a year where 10 wins minimum to get into the NCAA tournament. So. If you include the conference tournament, maybe 11 or 12 wins, just because of the state of the league and where it is right now. But Arkansas did get those 2 non-conference wins. Florida does have NC State to hang on its hat, and Washington. So I'm sure that they're going to be rooting for those teams. They're probably rooting for Florida State as well, considering they had a 2-point loss up there in their building.
That's true, and it'll be interesting to see. Now, Florida obviously trying to get over the hump and try to not let what happened last year happen again. When I watched this team, Kevin, I would call this team a little better than last year. They're still not a real good team, but they're a little bit better than last year. They press better. I think they kind of understand what they're supposed to do. They still can't do it. And I was talking to Mark Wise about this the other day. He said, if you want to make pineapple upside down cake and you don't have the pineapples, you can't make it. And I think that's where Florida is in the rebounding department.
Yeah, rebounding and defense as well. They don't really have guys that can necessarily in the half court, have that lateral quickness where they can stop guys. But, like you said, they do press better. I think they're a little bit deeper. I think a guy like Irving Walker coming off the bench, I don't see Florida having that type of player last year, and that might help them. They could have really used Adam Allen this year as another perimeter shooter off the bench. That would have really helped.
Well, when you say another perimeter shooter, I'm waiting for the first perimeter shooter. I mean, Chandler Parsons, what a disappointment he's been. I'm one of those guys who said, watch out for Chandler Parsons next year. He's going to get stronger. You see how he can explode to the basket. He can shoot the three. And nothing. I mean, he when's the last time he made a big shot? He's got to start stepping up.
The two guys I thought that were going to have to make a leap for them to be better were Jay Lucas, who's no longer here, and Chandler Parsons.
So Jay Lucas made a real leap to Texas.
To Texas, and Chandler Parsons, who's no longer here. So, I mean, that's certainly. But, I think a guy like Walker can shoot a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think Walter Hodge has certainly made some big shots early in the season, but he's a guy that has to get more consistent. To me, Dan Werner is a big mystery, just how he just continues to struggle from the perimeter, because he was a guy coming out of high school that was supposed to be a very good shooter. They were thinking a Matt Bonner type, and it just hasn't materialized. And last year he was doing the little things. He was being kind of a grittier guy. This year I don't see that.
Well, the bottom line is they are 15-2. I think we all know, we're not trying to denigrate them, but when you watch this team play, and like I said when we opened up last year at 18-3, you were like, wow, Billy's doing a wonderful job with these guys. This year you're like looking at them going, well, it's coming. So we'll see. Maybe they can fool us and get it done, because right now I look at a team and see one of the 30 or 40 best teams in the country right now.
The schedule sets up again in February for a really hard time. You go on the road to LSU, you go on the road to Kentucky, you've got Tennessee and Kentucky at the end of the year. Although I think from watching Tennessee, they're a little vulnerable this year.
They don't play any defense. They may be the only team in the SEC worse than Florida defensively.
Yeah, and Wayne.
And I think they're last in the SEC in points.
Wayne Chisholm has been wildly inconsistent, and I think they missed Lofton and Jawan Smith. So Florida, they could be in that 2-3 range in the SEC East, and if they are, that might get them in the tournament.
If I could get anything for Christmas, you know what it would be? What? I know Christmas is a long way off. A matchup between Jody Meeks and Corey Brewer. I'd just like to see that. Corey Brewer is a junior, Jody Meeks right now, because watching Meeks the other night was unbelievable. 54 points, but get a hand in his face just once in the game.
Yeah, what a phenomenal. And I think that they did a pretty good job setting him up too, driving the perimeter and just kicking out to him, and 10 of 15, breaking Dan Issel's record. Which,
that was amazing. It was fun to watch, actually. Always fun to watch Tennessee people miserable. Anyway, I'd like to see that Corey Brewer in his junior year, because when you look at Florida and you're thinking down the road about Meeks, who's going to cover him? Walter Hodge? A 5'9" guy. It would be great to see that, but we'll never see it.
Might be a game where you see Shipman a lot, Ray Shipman, because he's their best perimeter defender.
Maybe in the NBA we'll see that matchup. Anyway, Florida, Arkansas Saturday, and then Florida, South Carolina in Columbia Wednesday. That'll be this week. And then we'll come back and wrap up those two games and give you a preview of what's coming up for the Florida Gator basketball team. Until then, Kevin Brockway and Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun saying so long.